Well, it's a win.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Saturday, December 7th, 2024. Welcome into this live postcast edition of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers, you place a $5 bet. If it wins, good news, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets. Check it all out at FanDuel.com. Want to welcome in all the everydayers and, of course, our Locked On Tar Heels Discord members and Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Let's get right after it. Carolina, 68-63 win over Georgia Tech. And it was not pretty, but Carolina's 1-0 in ACC play, moves to 5-4 on the season. Here's where we go in these live post-game shows. Several immediate reactions to look at. We'll take an ad break or two, and then we'll get to your comments and questions in the chat. So welcome on in. Go ahead. If you've got some of those questions or observations, drop them in, and we'll get to them later in the show. What I just said, that's where I want to start. Carolina just simply needed a win. I don't care if it was 100-0 or 68-65 like it was. Just needed to get back in the win column after losing 3 straight games, Auburn, and then Michigan State and Alabama. And again, you know, there is this weird dichotomy of it's the worst record in the first 8 games since the 2001-2002 season, since when Carolina went 8-20, but also it's like the first time since the 1960s or something like that. I wrote it down. Since 1967, where Carolina has played 3 top 10 teams in their first 8 games. So both of those things can be true. And Carolina just simply needed to do the things to get done, to get a win. And look, Carolina's 1-0 in ACC play. All 18 teams are playing either today or tomorrow. 16 of the 18 are playing today. Duke and Louisville play tomorrow. 9 of these 18 schools aren't going to be able to say they're 1-0. They're going to have to say they're 0-1. So again, it's not pretty, but when we look back, we'll just say, hey, Carolina beat Georgia Tech to start ACC play, which again is very important, not just for right now, but your first 2 games of the rest of the ACC slate are both on the road. And so you really need to get a win here. And that's what Carolina did. So again, not pretty, but Heels are 1-0 in ACC play. We've had to say so many kind of negative, sad things lately. I want to start with a positive, and that was Seth Trimble. I feel like Seth Trimble hadn't been quite the same level of intensity, dynamic playmaker in the last couple games as he had been in the first 3 or 4 games of the season. I thought he was back to that today. He was key in triggering. Carolina got down 16-8. Carolina won an 13-0 run in total, but they went on an 8-0 run to tie it up. Ian Jackson had the first bucket of that. And then Seth had the next 6 points of that to actually tie it. He finishes with a team-leading 19 points on yet another wildly efficient 5 of 6 from the field. 1 made 3 that I believe tied it up. It was so back and forth in the second half. It felt like one team was leading by 1 point for a vast majority of the middle of the second half. And then 8 of 9 from the free throw line, where again, Seth Trimble has made a massive leap this year. Very proud of him and how he's been able to do that. Finishes also with 7 rebounds, 3 of which were on the offensive end. That was very critical against Georgia Tech, which had some length and size on North Carolina. So Seth playing bigger than his 6'3", as he often does, was important. Not all of those things, but had 4 steals in this game. Carolina had 11 total, 4 from Seth, 3 from Elliott, and then 2 from RJ Davis made up 9 of those 11 steals. So I just thought Seth Trimble's contributions in this game were key and critical for North Carolina. And obviously those box score numbers I'm talking about don't even go to show like just everything he did just to make the team better in all those intangible ways that he always does. So I just wanted to start there because I thought that was a big plus, a big positive and a helpful thing for Carolina in this game. But then we got to get to the negatives because there were quite a few again in this game. As we said, it was not sunsets and rainbows and beautiful things. The front court. Man, it just continues to be an issue for North Carolina. 0 points in the first half. Carolina scored 31 points in the first half, none of them by a front court player. And that is compounded by the fact that Ty Claude, you might have been aware, maybe not, near the end of the Alabama game, got his eye scratched, was out today officially with a corneal abrasion. That sounds awful. If you saw him on the bench during the game, I mean, his right eye was very, very swollen today, and so made a ton of sense that he didn't play. Jalen Washington tweaked his ankle pretty good in the second half, was eventually able to come back in, but like a thin front court was made all the thinner. Ven-Allen Lubin was in foul trouble throughout all that. James Brown got just a little bit of time, but it was another reminder of the front court misses and struggles this offseason. And one of the things I said was even if you think Jay Wash is the answer in the front court ahead of this season, you need another dude for days like today when one of your kind of rotation guys back into the rotation with Ty Claude is out. Although, even though back into the rotation, I thought he was Carolina's best energy against Alabama. So you had that. You had Ven-Allen Lubin getting into some foul trouble. You had Jalen Washington's injury. And that's the thing. It's like, if you think Jay Wash is the guy, but he's getting hurt or in foul trouble, what's going to happen? And so that reared its ugly head today. And Carolina's just playing musical chairs there in the front court, honestly. Just trying to find something. And to that point, we had yet another starting lineup, the second new lineup in as many games today. It was, against Alabama, Drake Powell came into the starting lineup for Jalen Withers, but the other four were the same: Elliott, Cadeau, RJ Davis, Seth Trimble, and Jalen Washington. Today, it was tweaked again. Drake Powell stayed in the starting lineup with 3G, which if you're new, I just referred to the 3-guard starting lineup of Elliott, Seth, and RJ as 3G just to save time. But now it's taken more time because I've explained it. So you had 3G, Drake, and for the first time, Ven-Allen Lubin started in place of Jalen Washington in this game. And that's what I've kind of been clamoring for lately, just because it's like, I think Jalen Washington has the higher upside. I really do. But I think Ven-Allen Lubin is tougher, and against a team that's got a guy like Bay and Dongo, you need that grit and that brute strength that Ven-Allen Lubin has more of. And so I was glad, that they went with that, because I think you at least got to try it. As Mark Campbell's not able to join me today, but one of the things he and I were texting about during the game was, he said it's clear that Carolina is just searching. It's like, in math class and growing up, like elementary school or high school, you didn't really know how to solve a problem, so you just guess and check until you get it right. Mark texted me, I feel like that's what this is. He said this is the guess and check method. Just try some lineups until you find something that's working. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean, it's like what has been happening is not working. So just keep trying stuff until you find something and figure out a combination that can work. Here's what was odd to me is I feel like the Tar Heels didn't give it enough time to see if it was going to work. I mean, it was 2-ish minutes into the game, and Jalen Washington was checking in for Ven-Allen Lubin. And then ironically enough, the second half, Coach Davis went back to that starting lineup that he started against Alabama. So it was 3G, Drake Powell, and Jalen Washington to start the second half. But it was the exact reverse. Jay Wash played about 2 minutes, and then here comes Ven-Allen Lubin off the bench. And so you didn't even really, I feel like, have an opportunity to see if it was going to work. So I don't know. It was just a weird usage of that to me. But I'm glad. What I like to see is I'm proud of Coach Davis for trying it, right? Like, clearly X is not working, so let's try Y. Y is not working, let's go to Z. And I think you got to keep messing with that and keep fiddling until you ultimately see what you have. And what else is crazy is with the front court struggles in the first half, and then the prolonged struggles along with the injuries and foul trouble in the second half, Carolina's just said, forget it. Let's just go super small. So there was a stretch right after Ven-Allen Lubin picked up his fourth foul where Drake Powell came in. That moved Jalen Withers to the 5. Elliott had been struggling. We'll get to that in a minute. And so your lineup at that point was RJ Davis, Seth Trimble, Ian Jackson, Drake Powell, and Jalen Withers. And at that point, it was kind of cool because Georgia Tech had to take out Ndongo because he's not going to be able to keep up with that lineup. Now, to be fair, I said goes really small. Ndongo's 6'9", just like Jalen Withers is. So, I mean, from a height standpoint, he's got that, but Ndongo has the beef on him. And then right after that, Carolina ultimately subbed out Drake and Ian came. So it must have been Elliott, RJ, Seth, and Drake along with Jalen Withers, because then Drake went out and in comes Ian Jackson. So then you had Elliott Cadeau, RJ Davis, Seth Trimble, Ian Jackson. That was your 1 through 4. Kind of crazy, along with Jalen Withers there. And then eventually Jalen Washington checked in for Jalen Withers. And I kind of like that too. Just 4 straight up guards in Jalen Washington. So just, again, fiddling around, seeing what you can do is what Carolina did. And ultimately, it really was the guards that carried this thing. As I said, 0 front court points in the first half. That's because the quartet of 3G and Ian Jackson scored all 31 points in the first half. And in totality, those same 4 guys scored 59 of Carolina's 68 total points. You had, as I said, Seth leading the way with 19. RJ had 16, 15 for Ian Jackson, and 9 for Elliott Cadeau. And so they really carried things, although not necessarily efficiently so. And another inefficient shooting day, but they did have the vast majority of the points. So plenty more to get here to today. Carolina kind of didn't get off to the same slow start they have been lately, although it still wasn't great. 3-point struggles, what's going on with Elliott Cadeau, turnovers, and so much more. We're going to get to all that coming up here in just a second. Right after I tell you about game time, y'all, college basketball season is here. There's absolutely nothing better than the atmosphere of a college basketball game. I know it was kind of low today for Carolina, but finals are going on. Some students had finals during this game. And so it's like, yeah, you got to kind of deal with that. Well, next Saturday, a week from today, is one of those kind of Christmas breakish kind of games hosting LaSalle. So get ready for that. Find some tickets on Game Time. Go check it out. You never know what's going to happen. Maybe Carolina's going to go off, see some kind of crazy dunk like Seth Trimble almost had in the first half today. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. Filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. Go check it out. I used it literally a week ago today to buy some tickets for my family for something later on this year. Whether it's Game Time ticket coverage, lowest price guarantee, or the panoramic views from your seat in the app, man, Game Time has got you covered. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, let's go ahead and get the box score pulled up here so we can follow along with that as I talk to you about what was going on in this game. The next place I want to go is talking about slow start. You will recall North Carolina, all 3 games in Maui and Alabama got down by double digits in the first half. Also, the same thing happened at Kansas, meaning that every game Carolina had played against a high major opponent this year, and Dayton, who essentially is because they're really good, they had been down by double-digit points in the first half. 4 straight, 5 of their first 8. Good news, they did not get down by double digits in the first half today, the first time all season against a high major opponent. But it was not far off from that. Carolina was down by 8 in the first half of this game on 2 separate occasions, including that 16-8 deficit I mentioned before Carolina went on that 13-0 run to take a lead. In real time, it felt like, okay, here's this run. Carolina's going to get it figured out and keep on trucking. And it just wasn't. Carolina just kept shooting themselves in the foot, kept turning the ball over, all of these things, and could not ultimately pull away from Georgia Tech. But I mean, I get you again. A win is a win. Not getting down by double digits is not getting down by double digits from a very technical standpoint. So that is encouraging. But still, it felt like you were down double digits the way Carolina was playing. And to that point, the offense just looked out of sorts, looked out of rhythm, really, really struggled to find what they were trying to do. There were moments, there were pockets of penetration and a dump off for a big, for a dunk in the second half, some things like that. Nice transition. We'll talk about some of that. But Carolina just doesn't often feel like they've got an offensive rhythm. And I know the offense has been playing great, the majority of the season, but both this game and the Alabama game were the first 2 games this season they've been under 1 point per possession in scoring. And here are some of the things that lead to those issues for me. Number one of my Coach Pat Kilby and I on yesterday's show, one of our 4 corners preview points was that Elliot Cadeau really needed to control this game, be the leader that Carolina needs, and do all that. And you guys, it was, as Mark Campbell said in the Alabama postcast, Elliot was kind of a no-show in that game. Today, another tough day for Elliot. 7 turnovers. And one of them was like stepping on the sideline. RJ also had one of those, I guess I should mention. But there were some passes that felt out of rhythm or were just like a quarterback throwing it too high for the receiver. There was one of those I remember just opposite of Carolina's bench. I think he was trying to get it to Jay Witt in the corner. There was some miscommunication. There was one where I think Elliott thought RJ was going to keep cutting baseline and he didn't. You saw them talking about that as the play finished and things went to a timeout there. And it's just been a struggle for Elliott. Hit a massive 3 down the stretch. Carolina was up 2, late shot clock. Elliott hits that, puts Carolina up 5. You probably remember that. That was a big shot in this game, but it made Elliott 1 of 6 from 3 on the day, 4 of 13 from the field. Interestingly, did have 6 rebounds. Remember, he led Carolina in rebounds against Alabama and was right there today too. Did have 4 assists to lead the team and a block and 3 steals just behind Seth Trimble's 4. So there were some good things that Elliott's doing. But he's been struggling, in the last 5 games. If I added it all up, right, 23 turnovers in the last 5 games. That's nearly 5, just shy of 5 turnovers a game in that stretch. That's just not going to cut it. So, and by the way, those 5 games, that would be Maui, Alabama, and today. Adam Lucas had noted, I forget when or where I read it or heard it from him, that Elliott's been a bit under the weather lately. So, look, that's a factor. We've got to recognize that, right? Like, these are human beings dealing with human being things. But for Carolina's offense to be what it needs to be, for this team to be what it needs to be, Elliott has to be able to be really leading and guiding the way. I did forget to check his fouls. Just 2 fouls for Elliott. So that's good. Remember, he's been struggling with some first half foul issues. So I think Elliott not being able to lead in the way offensively that Carolina needs him to was a key factor in Carolina's offense struggling. Another, I know that Elliott had 7 turnovers. Carolina as a team had 18. So it was not just Elliott, although he had by far the most. The next offender was Jalen Withers, who had 3, which goes back to, always the concern with Jalen Withers is consistency, hanging onto the ball and doing those things. And so that, of course, is a bit of concern for Jay Witt. But as a team, Carolina had 18 turnovers. For this team that started the season so good, so strong at holding onto the ball, not turning it over, the Tar Heels have been struggling each of the last 5 games. So starting with the Dayton game in Maui going forward, it has been an issue. I wonder if Ken Pom has already updated since this game. Carolina has dropped to 31st at Ken Pom. Yikes. They're 4th in adjusted tempo, so they're moving, but they're just not doing what they need to do. The offense, which had been playing as a top 10 offense at Ken Pom, drops to 24th, and let's see where the turnover. Yeah, so Carolina has now dropped to 14.3 turnover percentage, which is 34th in the nation. I know that doesn't sound bad when you got 364 teams, but Carolina had been like a top 5 team in terms of not turning the ball over, and a lot of them are self-inflicted because their steal percentage allowed is just 6.4%, 6th in the nation. So that has stayed elite. It's Carolina committing unforced turnovers. That has to be cleaned up. I get you're going to give the ball up sometimes to steals, but Carolina's doing very well to not allow that. So turnovers, and specifically unforced turnovers, have got to be cleaned up. Next, the other thing I want to mention that the offense is really struggling with is 3-point shooting. Today, 5 of 24, you guys, from deep in this game. For the first half, Carolina was 3 of 13. Thankfully, 2 of those came from RJ. That was a good sign. Ian Jackson hit the other one. And then 2 of 11 in the second half. That's not going to cut it. And the problem is, it's not just a one-off. Carolina shot, I had written it down, 5 of 28 versus Alabama, meaning in the past 2 games, the Tar Heels are 10 of 52 from deep. That's absolutely bad. They're down to 33% as a team shooting from 3, which is, is not awful, but given what Carolina's roster is made up of, they got to be a better three-point shooting team. Part of that is the players you expect to do it not shooting all that well. And part of it is, like Cade Tyson is just a non-factor right now. Y'all, at this point in the season, I got to put my hand up and say, swing and a miss by your guy, Isaac Schade, right? Like I was all in on Cade Tyson and he's all out. Like he's not doing it in this game. Let's see, Cade for the game. Let me get back to the game box. Played 5 minutes, took one shot, that three. It was a wide open three and missed it. It's just not there right now. And that is unfortunate for Carolina. But here are a couple good things before we take another break and get to your comments. Where the offense is finding its rhythm is in fast break opportunities. And thankfully, they're getting a good number of steals and finished the game 16-5, outscoring Georgia Tech in fast breaks, and actually led points in the paint 34-22. I expected Georgia Tech to just go to Bade Dongo over and over and over. And he had a double-double, but I didn't think it was as dominant a performance as it could have been. I was worried that they were just going to go to him all game, clear out, and force Carolina to either double or get burned one-on-one, and they didn't. So that was encouraging. And to that point, as Carolina has done against some other teams unexpectedly, they led rebounds in this game. Carolina out-rebounded Georgia Tech 48-37. And what I love, we've talked about, without Armando Bacot, you got to rebound by committee. And Ven-Allen Lubin led the team with 8 rebounds, but 6 different Tar Heels had 6 or more rebounds. That's what they got to have. And what's cool is it's not just bigs. Carolina's the 3G. Elliott had 6. RJ had 7. Seth had 7. So you've got your 3 guards getting 20 of your 48 rebounds. That's great. That's like basically 40% of your rebounds coming from those 3 guys. So you will certainly take that. Another thing that really helps is Ian Jackson has turned in his 3 highest scoring games in each of Carolina's last 3. So that would be Michigan State, Alabama, and now Georgia Tech. To follow up his 23-point career high game against Alabama, had 15 today, including 2 really big free throws late in the game, big pressure free throws, calmly steps to the line, drills it. Had 14 against Michigan State. So doing really, really well offensively the last 3 games. I love that Carolina, has kind of gone to what they're doing starting and then getting Ian in pretty quick. Just let him see the flow of the game a little bit and then bringing him in. I like that because he's still getting all sorts of minutes. Like, although he didn't start this game, played the 4th most minute on the team behind only Seth, RJ, and Elliott. And so 27 minutes. So it's one of those things where it's like, Ian's not starting the game, but he's getting starters minutes and he's closing games. That's encouraging. And I'm thankful for that. One other thing I wanted to mention was, there's been so much conversation about the defense. And I think there was a step forward today from the defense, but Carolina still has to be better at guarding individually, about communicating. There was a play, and it was Seth and RJ that got messed up where Carolina, there was a screen. Both Seth and RJ stayed with the ball handler, wide open 3 from the top for Georgia Tech, and they nailed it. I mean, they struggled just like Carolina did from 3, although shot a little bit better. They were 8 of 27, 29%. And so I think Georgia Tech's woes today, because they were, while they shot better than Carolina from 3, Carolina shot better from the field and from the free throw line in this one. And so I thought Georgia Tech just, quite frankly, missed a bunch of open shots. There were moments like that run that 13-0 run Carolina went on. Had it been Bama or a more offensively capable team, I don't think Carolina would have gone on that run. It was just Georgia Tech not making shots they should make. And so I still think there's a lot to be improved on for the defense this year. All right, there's a bunch of comments coming in, and so I want to see what you have to say, observations, questions. Let's have some dialogue together here, and we'll move on to that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if you win, you get $150 back in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. For example, I know we're talking NFL, but maybe right now you're watching the SEC championship game in the background while we talk here. Maybe you've got some hunches on what's going to happen with Texas and Georgia. Well, you can go do that. Maybe you get a hunch. You can check it out on the same page you place your bets, view the latest stats, see live play-by-play, so much more. Visit FanDuel.com to get in on all that today. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, I'm pulling up comments to see what we got going on here. Some sad faces. Matthew 624 says, hopefully we can make the NIT. I hear this, but listen, folks, it's early. It is early. Still more non-con games to be played. Still more big-time non-con games to be played. Critically, Florida. If you're not aware, man, Florida is really, really good. Carolina still has a chance for an elite non-con win. UCLA is solid. They could get that. Those would be two big wins on the resume. But Carolina's got to get some things figured out ahead of that. And I guess I'll say along with that as Carolina is still searching for rotations, for personnel groupings, and how that's all going to come together, things should be better. But we got to get there. And I could eat those words. I know that. I recognize it in real time. But there it is. Paul H says, maybe just cut down on turnovers. Yeah, I know that sounds duh and simplistic and silly, but let me remind us what we looked at on our live postcast after the Alabama game with turnovers for Carolina. Let's see if I can get to it here. Where's my offensive rebounding stats page? Here we go. Okay. Carolina. Sorry, we're finding this in real time. Turnovers. Okay. The first 4 games of the season, 6, 11, 9, 5. Again, and that 11 was against Kansas. So you were under single digits in 3 of those 4 and just 11 in one of them. In the 5 games since, 15, 10, 11, 13, and today 18. And I mean, that's like you could almost draw a demarcation line on those 2 points of the season. Also, that directly coincides with what we said about Elliott's turnovers in the last 5 games. So again, while I know this is like, just cut down on the turnovers. If you do that, if you cut today's turnovers in half, so many silly ones, let's say it's 9 turnovers instead of 18, even 10 turnovers instead of 18. That's 8 possessions that are ending with a shot. And I know Carolina wasn't as efficient today offensively as they typically are, but that's conservatively 15 more points. This game is not even a game if you're doing that. So again, I know that's silly, but cut down on the turnovers and you're in a much, much better spot. And so there you go. And it just is what it is. Our guy, Tony Dowd. What's up, Tony Dowd? Tony says, you're exactly right, Isaac. Come on, Tony, spell my name right. I got 2 A's, 1 S. It's okay. Everybody does. I'm just giving you a hard time. Seth was on fire today on both ends of the court, attacking the basket on offense and playing sticky defense out front. I like that. And down low. Yes, I know we talked about Seth earlier, but I like what Tony's saying here. And so I want to get to these things. What I think really made the difference, how I said Seth hadn't really felt like the same high level impact Seth that he had been in the last couple games, but he was today. I think a lot of that was his attacking on offense, man. It's just like you as a defender, you're either going to have to get out of the way or you're going to get trucked or you're almost going to get highlight reel dunked on, as Seth did, nearly completed. But man, the defense, I know I just talked about that miscommunication with RJ. Everybody's going to have those occasionally. But I mean, Seth, in a game like this, where Carolina is going uber small, is going to have to guard bigger guys and is going to have to be active and get position early and do all these things. And so it's like, can the rest of you get in line behind Seth and just feed off that energy and make it happen? Because I think there could be some good things after that. So there. Derek Tyson, what's up, Derek? Says, do you still like Hubert's substitution patterns? Here's the thing that is, to me, is that Coach Davis himself will talk about, like, there aren't specific defined roles for these guys. They kind of come in as needed and do these other things. And and here's this and that. And there are things that can translate from the NBA level down to college, sets, other things that are frankly going to have to as NIL becomes more and more a thing. But what I don't like, I feel like college players need defined roles so they know more specifically what they've got to do. They are not yet, while they are high level elite basketball players, I do not, because they are not allowed yet, because they're student athletes, not just athletes, because there are other things they have to focus on in their day, they are not yet able to hone in on just being ready at a moment's notice, like a closer might be, or a relief pitcher might be in baseball. And so, Derek, to your question, I would like to see more consistency. Now, I think, to be fair, what I do appreciate is trying to figure out the combinations. We do, like, some of that is still ongoing. And I think it's going to have to be ongoing for a while. So I understand that it's going to lead to different substitution patterns. But once Carolina gets there, I want to see consistency in what that all looks like. I hope that makes sense, Derek. I love the question there. Derek King says, unfortunately, RJ Davis is a liability if he isn't hitting threes. His defense is not great, and he is undersized and the problem. Derek, I would say it's not that his defense isn't great. It's that the size doesn't allow his defense to be great. I think there are ways in which RJ is a strong defender. And like, going back to Wednesday against Alabama, had to guard Jaren Stevenson, for crying out loud, and had some good moments in that, had to do some of the similar things here today. But the issue, and they were talking about this on the broadcast, if you were watching the broadcast of it instead of live at the game, is how RJ had been talking this week to the guys, to the broadcasters, about, I'm being guarded differently this year, specifically because there is not the threat of Armando Bacot. Teams are deciding to stay home on RJ instead of out of necessity. Like last year, they didn't want to help off RJ because he was insane. But they're just saying, there is no front court player from North Carolina that we are even remotely concerned about. So let's stay home on RJ and help off of other guys. And that causes a problem. And so for RJ, he is getting some open looks, and some of those just simply aren't falling. That is very true. But there are more contested looks he's facing because teams don't respect Carolina's front court, which again goes back to what we talked about earlier of, because you didn't land a dude, you're screwed. Oh man, I hate that rhymes, because now it's going to be stuck in my head and I'll probably have to use it again. So Derek, yeah, I mean, I think it's all part of the same thing. RJ is not as effective or as efficient as he was last year, but I think part of that is because of what Carolina doesn't have in the front court. And so, to quote an Austin Powers movie, it's a vicious cycle. I think, what does he say? I eat because I'm hungry, and I'm hungry because whatever. Anyway, it's that thing. It all goes together and plays around. And look, Nintendo, what's up? It's our guy Nintendo. Despite how ugly it was and all the mistakes we made, we won. A win is a win. Use this to get some momentum. And that's the thing. Like, that's what I was talking about right at the beginning. Like, just getting back in the win column is so important. I don't care how it happened, but use this. Now you got a week off for exams before you host LaSalle next Saturday, which, by the way, we will not have I'll just go ahead and say now, and I'll remind you throughout the week, no live postcast after LaSalle next Saturday. I'm going to be out of town. But man, it is a win, and hopefully it can be a building block to something, but also nice because you got a lot of film you can build on off of it as well. And so love with that. So Ken Johnson says, is Tyler Hansborough available? LOL. He got no eligibility, but he was sitting at the scorer's table on the broadcast today. So would love to have him, but man, there's a lot to be figured out still. And it's a lot of the same storylines. I think that's where we ultimately get to here is still a lot to be figured out with this thing, because Carolina is still slow in the first half, still not getting anything from the front court, still not strong enough defense, still RJ struggling to get going. Like, all of these storylines are the same storylines. Just thankfully you got to win today despite that. So look, I know Coach Davis and the staff are going crazy just like you and I are. I know the players are going crazy and are frustrated just like you and I are. Hopefully a week, get done with school, have some time together to just say, what's going on? What do we got to fix? Can get things going back in the right direction. So, guys, look, we will be back on Monday's show. Hey, by the way, we have not yet, so let's celebrate. UNC women's soccer dispatches Duke 3-0 in the women's Final Four. They call that the College Cup. Will play not tomorrow, Monday night for the national championship. They'll face Wake in that. Hopefully get some redemption from that awful call in the national championship that went against Carolina. Was it 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago now? I just can't get over it. I'm so frustrated by that. So twice now in the last 4 academic years, Carolina has ended a Duke coach's career in the Final Four, because this was Duke coach's last season as well. And I guess we should also throw in, it was that Carolina coach's first season, because that was Hubert Davis's first year, and this is Damon Nahas's first year not filling in, but as interim head coach for Anson Dorrance. So word to the wise, Duke coaches, you want to get out? Don't play Carolina in the Final Four. Things will not go well for you. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your weekend. We got the ACC football championship game tonight and all sorts of other stuff coming up. And so I'm sure you're going to be all locked in on that. It's tough. I feel happy that Carolina won, but I do not feel good about the win. I would imagine that's where you're all at as well. So we got to sit with that now for a week, because Carolina doesn't play again for a week. Thanks so much for joining me on the show today. If you enjoyed these live postcasts, make sure you hit that bell notification on YouTube so you get notified as soon as we go live, and you can tap right in. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the show on YouTube, make sure you do that. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers in 3 years, and we're so close. If you haven't subscribed, please, would you just hit that subscribe button? If you aren't subscribed on audio, to make sure, maybe, I still prefer to listen to my podcast. And so I'm subscribed to all my shows on the audio platforms. You can find us anywhere you listen to audio. If you haven't joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, free to join, links in the show notes. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders and you want to go even deeper with the show, be able to text me one-on-one, have access to all my stats and data, man, that link is in the show notes as well. Would love for you to be part of that. You guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Win. It's a win. It's a win. Just keep repeating that mantra to yourself like I am. We'll talk again on Monday, but until then, peace.